In the annals of the Republic, where the ink of myth and history blur, George Washington looms large, cast in bronze and marble, revered by the school books and the national conscience. But beneath the burnished surface of his legacy, shadows gather, dark and unyielding. The first president, the so-called father of the nation, was not without his sins. He was a man of his time bound by the brutal calculus of power and expansion. In the twilight of the 18th century, the Northwest Territory stood as a contested frontier, a land of promise for settlers and a bastion of life for the Native American tribes who called it home. Washington, with a vision of an expansive America, set his gaze upon these lands. The clash was inevitable, a tragic script written by the forces of ambition and survival. The Treaty of Greenville, forged in the aftermath of bloodshed and betrayal, shows this relentless march. Here, the indigenous peoples were coerced into ceding vast tracts of their ancestral lands, their rights signed away under the looming threat of continued violence. It was a pact sealed not with the ink of justice, but with the sorrow and blood of a people dispossessed. George Washington, hailed as a hero, revealed a darker visage in this chapter of American history. The price of his vision was steep, paid in the currency of Native American suffering. This is the untold story, the shadow beneath the pedestal, where the myths of greatness falter and the harsh truths emerge. In the heart of the burgeoning U.S. lay the Northwest Territory, a vast expanse stretching from the Ohio River to the Great Lakes. This land, rich with forests, rivers, and fertile soil, was more than a prize for the fledgling nation. It was the sacred homeland of numerous Native American tribes. The Shawnee, Miami, Delaware, and many others had lived and thrived here for centuries, their cultures intertwined with the land itself. As settlers poured westward, driven by dreams of land and prosperity, the frontier became a volatile battleground. The native tribes, fierce in their resistance, fought to protect their homes. Leaders like Blue Jacket, Little Turtle, and Tecumseh emerged as formidable opponents, their names echoing through the dense forests and across the wide rivers of the territory. They rallied their people, forging alliances and striking back against the encroaching settlers and soldiers. The conflict was relentless and brutal. In 1790 and 1791, U.S. forces suffered devastating defeats at the hands of the Confederated tribes. These victories were hard won by the Native Americans, but they also galvanized the resolve of the American government to subdue the territory. President Washington, recognizing the strategic importance of the Northwest, resolved to break the resistance and secure the land for the United States. The decisive blow came in 1794, at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. General Anthony Wayne led a well-trained army against the native forces, inflicting a crushing defeat. The tribes, weary and outmatched, were forced to retreat. The shadow of the American military might loomed large, signaling the end of significant resistance in the region. The battle was a prelude to the inevitable negotiations that followed, leading to the Treaty of Greenville. In August 1795, under the sweltering summer sun, representatives of the United States and various Native American tribes gathered at Fort Greenville. The treaty negotiations were fraught with tension and desperation. The Native American leaders, facing the specter of continued conflict and starvation, reluctantly agreed to cede vast portions of their land. The treaty's terms were harsh, demanding the relinquishment of present-day Ohio and large parts of Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan. The signing of the Treaty of Greenville marked a turning point. For the U.S., it was a triumph, opening the floodgates for westward expansion and settlement. For the Native American tribes, it was a moment of profound loss and betrayal. The land that had been their lifeblood, their identity, was stripped away, parcel by parcel. The treaty was a bitter acknowledgement of their diminished power and the relentless advance of the American frontier. The Northwest Territory, once a mosaic of vibrant native cultures, was transformed. Settlers carved farms and towns from the wilderness, forests fell to the axe, and the rivers ran with the currents of change. The tribes, displaced and fragmented, faced an uncertain future. The shadows of their ancestors lingered in the land, silent witnesses to a history written in conquest and survival. In this crucible of the Northwest Territory, the legacy of George Washington took on a darker hue. The man who led a revolution for freedom and independence presided over policies that led to the subjugation and suffering of native peoples. The Treaty of Greenville stands as a stark reminder that the march of progress often tramples those who stand in its path. The story of the Northwest Territory is a testament to the resilience of the native tribes and the tragic cost of the American dream. What were the long-term consequences of the Treaty of Greenville, though. First off, displacement and loss of native lands. The treaty required native tribes to cede large tracts of land, primarily in what was now Ohio, but also parts of Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan. This loss of land was a significant blow to the tribe's ability to sustain their traditional ways of life. The cession of these lands led to the forced relocation of many native tribes. As settlers moved into the newly acquired territories, tribes were pushed westward, leading to further conflicts and displacement. There was an increase in American settlement after the Treaty of Greenville because it opened up vast areas for the settlers, leading to a rapid increase in the development of the Northwest Territory, accelerating the westward expansion of the United States. The land acquired through the treaty eventually became part of new states, including Ohio, which was admitted to the Union in 1803. This set a precedent for the creation of the other states that we know in the region. As for the Native Americans, it marked a significant weakening of the Native Confederation's power and influence. The tribes that signed the treaty lost a crucial part of territory, and with it their ability to effectively resist further American encroachments. The treaty also set a precedent for subsequent treaties that continued to erode Native American lands and sovereignty. Over the following decades, additional treaties forced tribes to cede more territory and move further west. The loss of land and forced relocation disrupted the social and cultural fabric of Native societies. Traditional ways of life closely tied to the land were severely impacted. The cession of hunting grounds and agricultural lands led to economic hardships for many tribes. Dependent on these lands for their subsistence, tribes faced increasing poverty and reliance on government aid. The Treaty of Greenville laid the groundwork for future U.S. policies towards Native peoples, which often involved land cessions and forced relocations. This treaty exemplified the U.S. government's approach to dealing with Native tribes during westward expansion. Despite the treaty, tensions between natives and settlers continued. The displacement and marginalization of Native Americans fueled ongoing conflicts, leading to further violence and resistance in subsequent years. The influx of settlers led to significant changes in the landscape. Forests were cleared, rivers were dammed or diverted, and new towns and farms sprang up. These changes had long-term environmental impacts on the region. The Treaty of Greenville was thus a pivotal moment in the history of the U.S. expansion, illustrating the profound and often devastating effects of American policies on Native American tribes. It represents a critical chapter in the broader narrative of westward expansion and the displacement of Native peoples. Thank you for joining us today.